Our next fireside chat will discuss the future of biotech and defense. Join me in welcoming Dr. Jason Kelly, Chair of the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, in conversation with Dr. Luciana Borio, venture partner at Arch Ventures.
Hi.
Hey, Liz.
Well, let me start by saying that I want a big thank you to Stephanie. I actually met Stephanie before Arch, and she's such a wonderful force for good. And also want to thank my good friend, Ilver and Lily for inviting me for this session today. So Jason, thank you so much for being here. We know that you have many hats and you're super busy, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. So, one of the things that many people know about you is that you love Jurassic Park.
That's true. I do.
So let me start by asking you, why is that movie so special for you?
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to be on this session talking about biotechnology, right? And it's in part because I chair a National Security Commission on Biotech, similar to an AI commission that Eric Schmidt chaired 4 or 5 years ago. And I think people, one of their first exposures to biotechnology is in the movies, right? And Jurassic Park was this great movie, and I felt like it did two big things. It showcased the wonder of biology, like the scale of it, right? Because we kind of take biology for granted, right? You're like, oh, this is a flower, right? Look at this thing. Okay, it's nice, it's pretty, right? But let's imagine a technologist walked in and said, hey, I just invented the seed.
Right.
I put this thing in the ground. I add air, water, and sunlight. It starts to collect carbon out of the air and self-assemble nanostructures with no manufacturing facility, build them, create solar panels to start to harvest energy from the sun and use that to continue to manufacture right there in place. I just invented it. Are you interested?
Yeah.
Right? We would lose our minds at that level of technology, but we're like, it's a flower, right? And that's, we take it for granted because it's so common to us. We're made of biology. We don't think of it as a technology platform. Jurassic Park is a little bit of a reminder of biology is powerful, right? And so I like that part. And then the other big message of Jurassic Park is life will find a way, right? So for those of us that are deploying the technology at the edge of the field, you need to do it with humility. Because unlike every other engineering field, where we're building on top of technology that humans invented, right? We invented mechanical engineering, we invented electrical engineering, we invented computer science. We inherited biology, right? It is freakishly powerful, but boy, magic, it runs on DNA code. And so we can program it, we can put new code in and make it do new things, but you need to approach that with humility. And so life will find a way, I actually think is a really good message for the aspiring young biotechnologist to hear. So those are some
Super inspiring.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to ask that, but I'm glad you asked that, actually. She told me she was going to do an icebreaker. I was afraid of what it was going to be.
I have others in the back.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So we're here to talk about biotechnology and defense. And, a lot of the audience does not have a background in biology or biotechnology. And I think it'd be really helpful if you can just paint a picture of what biotech is today and what will it look like in the future. Tell us what you're most excited about.
Yeah.
And, how would life be different in the future as a result of these advancements?
Yeah, and we're here at the Ash Carter Exchange. I'll say Secretary Carter invited me to speak at his class at the Kennedy School now probably 4 or 5 years ago, right? And I think for those of us that are sort of pushing the boundaries of technology, and sort of in my day job, I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company called Ginkgo Bioworks up in Boston that I founded. For those of us pushing the edge of the technology, we get a little worried that folks in government, folks in the military aren't aware of the absolute bleeding edge, and it's something that'll surprise us. And I think Secretary Carter, sort of he was ahead on that, bringing in biotechnologists. Now 4 or 5 years later, we have this commission, which I think is a great thing. And again, I think it shows the government essentially paying attention. There was a commission on cyber about 8 or 9 years ago, the AI commission, and then this is the third one. And I think it's sort of like semiconductors, AI, biotechnology in terms of strategic technologies coming up. And so I do think that, it is going to be an important technology. I'm glad people like Secretary Carter are pulling technology forward. So let me give you like a little bit about like what biology can do. So we all know about pharmaceuticals. That's what people's mind jumps to the most when they hear biotechnology. But I think for applications for this crowd, you're going to see a lot of applications in the areas of, for example, advanced materials. You're going to have applications in the area of producing and like production in situ. So for example, there's a company, it's called Biomason, that basically has a technology where you spray water, add microbes to a dirt field, and it hardens so that you can produce, think of it like a landing strip out where there wouldn't be one without needing to bring in concrete, right? And again, you can understand this because biology is out in nature doing that already, right? Look at corals, right? Look at wood, right? We know biology can make hard surfaces in place using the materials that are already there. And this is what I would do to sort of like get your mind thinking. If you look out in nature and you see biology doing something magical, it's self-assembling, it's self-repairing, it's camouflage, it's making advanced materials, that's a toolbox in the hands of genetic engineers to be able to design new devices and new things out of biology that could be useful to all of you. And so I think that whole area, that whole application, is a lot of the focus for the commission is some of those non-traditional medical biotech applications, the whole rest of the sphere of what you could do with biotechnology.
And agriculture?
For those who are interested in agriculture, there is enormous opportunity. So one of the first things, we had our interim report come out from the commission, I guess probably 6 months ago. And we spoke to some of what was going on with the Farm Bill, which has been going through recently. And so I think there's real opportunities for us to think again of plants, and in particular the agricultural land in the United States, as manufacturing infrastructure. Right, not just as making food, right? Food is important, but you know what? We actually, I don't know about I in particular, we have plenty of food, right? So what else could we be making on that land? And if you think of a plant, again, solar panels, ability to do, molecular manufacturing, if you put new DNA into that plant, you can make it do new things. And so why aren't we manufacturing advanced materials in Iowa on cornfields, right? I mean, that we absolutely can. Corn plants are capable of doing that, but we need to have the venture capital ecosystem. We need government support for things, that are pull on those types of technologies. But I would think of our farmland really like manufacturing infrastructure for advanced materials.
Well, I spoke to the CEO of Colossal recently, who is, working to recreate the woolly mammoth.
That's something.
And and I felt like all I wanted to ask for is like whether I would have a baby pet whale one day. And
whale.
I felt like it was a failure of imagination, but it was like the child in me really, really want this baby pet whale.
There is. I'll tell you. There's a new product that is the first USDA just approved the first GM houseplant ever. It's a petunia plant from a company called Light.bio that glows in the dark. Okay, it's really neat. It's like kind of like Pandora, in the Avatar, right? But I think these types of applications, like, don't underestimate, right? Like, look at how much of consumer technology in software and electronics was pulled by this type of stuff, right? And it pulls on the underlying tech, and this is, I think, the other important thing to remember. So, what's magic about biology is that inside of every cell is digital code in the form of DNA. Right? It's ATCs and Gs, not zeros and ones like in your computer, but it is digital and you can read and write that code. Remember the Human Genome Project? That was reading DNA. Okay, we can read DNA now about 1 million times cheaper than we could back in 2000. And then you can write DNA. You go on a computer, you hit ATCGG, you hit print, piece of DNA gets printed out, and you can install it into that cell. All right, and when you put the DNA in, it does something new. It's like putting a new app on your phone. So inside of every cell, and it is a codable language in DNA, right? And this is an important point because the only other thing we have like this is computers. They are the only other thing we build where you put in new information, you put in new digital code, and the next day it does something new. Except the problem with computers is all they move around is information, right? So if you look at what they disrupted, media, telecom, finance, information, all of your information-based technologies were disrupted by having this machine that could be redesigned overnight with new code. Biology is programmable. It runs on code, I swear. It's amazing. But it doesn't move information around. It moves atoms around. It's the programmable manufacturing technology, right? At the end of the day, we should be using it to make everything. And the limitation today is just our ability to design it, to program it, to know how to code it, right? And that is some of the things that you're seeing move the fastest in the industry today, is getting better at doing that design of DNA to make it do new things.
So we know that it covers things that are whimsical, the glowing plant, new perfumes, I understand, and also landing strips and manufactured inside. So there's a whole range of serious and fun issues. But, why is it so important for the United States, and even beyond its economic value? How does biotechnology impact and underpin our national security? Why is it that we must win?
Yeah, so I'll give you sort of two halves to that. And to think about how the commission is organized, about 3/4 of our effort is meant to ensure we win sort of economically and technologically in this new area. So again, just like there's a commission on AI 5 years ago, and we wanted to have ChatGPT moment. We didn't know that's what it was going to be called at the time, okay? We wanted that moment, that technological breakthrough, to happen in the United States. And it did, okay? So 3/4 of the effort for the commission is make sure a ChatGPT moment for biotechnology also happens first in the US. And then 1/4 of it is, what about the misuse, right? We just lived through a pandemic. What about infectious disease? What about the use of biology and biological weapons and things like that, right? So a quarter also has to be focused on that as well. Both of those things are important to national security. Both of those things are important. The first one, because who knows what you could use this technology for after you have those breakthrough technology moments. If you were around the clock 5 years, 10 years, you couldn't have said, the first thing artificial intelligence is going to disrupt is X or Y. The way it's going to move into military decision-making is Z, right? Like that, we didn't really know what would be possible with that technology, but boy, do you want to make sure you have it happen first, so then you're the first one to leap on top of it. Does that make sense? So even if you don't know for sure yet what's going to become easy and transformed when we have these breakthroughs, you still want it first when it's these type of technologies. And then on the 1/4 for security, I think it's a blind spot, to be honest. We have this interesting situation where again, I think COVID was like a dress rehearsal for something that could have been even worse. And, it grounded an aircraft carrier, right? When was the last time that happened? I think it was like in the 40s was the last time that happened, right? And so we think of that as a health problem, right? We're like, oh, well, that's like part of healthcare for soldiers and airmen. Well, not if it's being used in a way that was weaponized, right? Like not if someone's doing that deliberately to us, then it stops being a health problem. And we should be thinking of defense against infectious disease like we think of defense against missiles, right? Like we should be monitoring all the time. We don't outsource missile defense to the health department, right? Even though it's going to kill some people, okay, right? Like we shouldn't outsource the monitoring and targeting of infectious disease to the health department, right? Just because it kills people, right? It should be thought of in a strategic way. But I think we do have a potential blind spot there.
Renee was head of IARP. I'm not going to pronounce her last name. Who was here yesterday. I heard her say in the past that the reason why we put brakes on cars is not because we want to drive slow, but it's because we want to drive fast, safely.
Yes.
And I really think it's very important to, as you push full speed ahead with biotech innovation, to also think about what are the safeguards. And I love that the commission is approaching it in that way.
Yeah, to that end, one of the things that's coming up, you'll see in our final report, we've already started to release. We released now probably 20 or more of these 1 or 2 page sort of bit of information and a bit of recommendation on legislation, because the legislative commission. And so one of the things we're producing a series of papers on right now is the application of AI in biotechnology. And if you look at the president's executive order on AI, the one type of neural net model that's called out separate from language and video and images is DNA-based neural networks. Mm-hmm. Because like I mentioned, it's a language. Okay, your cells run on the language of DNA. A gene is read from start to finish. It's written in letters. They're chemical letters, but they are a code. Okay, so it looks a lot like human language, and the theory is very similar. If you give these neural nets enough language, they learn to speak it. You give the neural net enough Chinese books, it learns to speak Chinese better than me. I don't know how to speak Chinese. You give it enough English, it learns to speak English not quite as well as me. Okay, it's not as good a writer as me, but it learns it, all right? Here's the thing I think is important for us to watch. in my opinion, superhuman capabilities. In other words, neural nets that do a much better job than we do at speaking and writing and thinking in a language are going to happen first in DNA long before they happen in English. Because we invented English. We designed law. We designed all these things. You know, they're all built for our brains, right? And we're asking this neural net, which is fine. It's got a lot of parameters, but it's still kind of dumb. We're asking it to try to be as good at us as all the things we built. Well, once you go over to DNA language, it wasn't designed for us to understand. The best of us, the best bioengineers in the world, we don't really understand it. We're trying to reverse engineer it all the time. And so why wouldn't the neural nets get much better at it faster than we do? I think they're gonna. And today, what we're going to write about on the commission is that that's primarily a data problem. So we have huge amounts of English language data to train neural nets. We have lots of Chinese language data to train neural nets. We are light on DNA and biological data to train neural nets. We should get that first. We really should get that first. Okay, and that's sort of a strategic imperative, I think, for us if we want to have that ChatGPT moment happen first in the United States.
So talk a little bit more about this competition with China. You know, they are moving full speed ahead. It seems like it is, a big race with them. And you mentioned that, we have to win, but just elaborate a little bit more on the China problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's interesting. The systems are different, right? But I think what you see in China is direct investment in certain critical technology areas they think are important, with a connection between the government and the private sector very directly, right? And so we saw this, with Huawei and sort of in 5G and things like that. We see it with semiconductors, saw it with solar panels. I think very effectively they did. And now you're seeing it with biotechnology and with a number of companies and 5-year plans and 10-year, all the things, right? And we're not going to copy that system, right? We shouldn't. But I do think one of the things that struck me, and I encourage this crowd, because I know you're the kind of folks in a room hearing this, right? When I joined the commission, I was meeting a whole new ecosystem of people that, even though I've been doing synthetic biology for 20 years in the academic, and then we started the company 15 years ago. So in the start, I know all the venture capitalists. I know all the other startup founders. I know all the academics. And I didn't know one government person, right? And that's not totally fair, but it is like that. And so there is, I think, more of these opportunities for cross-pollination. We got to have that stuff in these advanced technology areas because China gets that for free, right? Like that, they have designed their system that way, right? So if we aren't proactive about that, it's a weakness. And so I would say that's pretty critical. That's when I think about workforce and things like that at a top level, it's about exchange between the sort of private, academic, and public sector. I really think we have a gap there when it comes to advanced technology.
So speaking of talent. This is crucial for this pipeline, and the U.S. has lost a lot of talent in the last 20 years, including to China. I hear that from my friends in startups in Boston that sometimes it's hard to even find a chemist who is under 40 years old in this country.
Yeah.
What are we doing and what is the commission doing to, this idea of developing, attracting, retaining, and winning this global competition for talent?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think you have to split it out because you can say that about chemists, but you wouldn't say it about computer scientists, right? You're like, wow, I got a lot of computer scientists. You're just good at computer scientists, not so good at chemists. All right, well, chemists has also been kind of like a boring, it has not been moving as fast. I don't want to say boring. I know I'm friends with a lot of chemists, but it has not been moving fast. And I think our students, they are naturally drawn to that frontier. So I think one of the things that we can do a little better is in these strategic technology areas, educate people on what's coming, right? Get them excited about it, right? And so one of the things we're working on with the commission, we teach literacy in this country. Like I mentioned, we do computer literacy, right? Like my 11-year-old daughter, she's learning all these programming languages. We're teaching kids to do that, right? We need to teach bioliteracy. So on the commission, one of the things we did a field hearing out in Indiana with Senator Young's on the commission. I learned about the scale of 4-H, for example, right? Hundreds of thousands of kids going through that program to learn things. Very, very biologically focused, right? It's like a half step to just add biotechnology to that program, right? You know, right? Like people, especially kids, are actually they're hungry for biology. They love biology, right? You have to teach your kids not to be obsessed with dinosaurs. And you're like, hey, really, you got to learn about this computer. I'm telling you, it's more important, right? Like, you know, like that's the, you know, you have to push them away from an obsession with biology. I don't think it would actually be that hard if we start to roll some of that early training in biotechnology in. And I think we've got the culture for it. I think the U.S. likes new technology. People like to be at the forefront, but we got to build those programs.
And there's been this discussion about, you know, the automatic visa for the best and brightest PhD students. You know,
There's still immigrate. I mean, listen,
that's a tough topic.
Yeah, I mean, look, the unfair advantage of the U.S. is we take everybody else's smart people, right? I mean, like, my gosh, like what an unfair advantage.
But maybe not for biotech.
You know, right? Like, it's so unfair.
So we are doing it for biotech.
We should do it. Yeah, I mean, I think in general it's a hard topic. Immigration is always a hard topic, but like, man, when you just look strategically at the United States, what an unfair advantage we have due to immigrants in this country.
So you know, before we go, you co-founded one of the most innovative companies in biotechnology, and one of the very early ones, Ginkgo Bioworks. Tell us what inspired you at that moment, you know, to be a pioneer and to do that.
Yeah, so I do think there's an interesting point here because we're trying to get, one of the topics on the commission is how do you get more of these types of companies started in the U.S., right? So we went through that experience. Actually, the first 5 years of the company, we bootstrapped. Today, Ginkgo, you know, we went public 2 years ago, raised a lot of money, $2 billion. But at the, you know, when we started the company, first 5 years, the first $5 million into Ginkgo was DARPA, NSF SBIRs, ARPA-E had just gotten stood up in the Recovery Act, right? Like we were built on top of patient government funding of translational research out of MIT was where we were. We need to make those programs like that in technology areas that aren't the ones that venture capitalists already go to. You need those programs. And I would say, again, if we're looking at competition with China, like that's the kind of stuff they'll just economically fund because it's strategically important. And so I think our sort of backstop to that is a couple $1 million here and there to very early stage companies to try to transition out technology we care about.
It makes all the difference.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we wouldn't exist without government funding early on at Ginkgo, 100%.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Any last words?
No, I think I'd leave it with, you know, this crowd is, I think, some of the people that are trying to understand what's coming next and going to influence national security. I think biotechnology is the next AI. I think that's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years. You're going to see this ChatGPT moment. I think it's going to be driven by data, scale of data we generate in this country, and I think we have the people to do it. But you all should be engage with the commission. Reach out to learn more, tell us more about what your needs are. But keep an eye on it and participate in it. Just like if you had gotten ahead of the ball on AI, you'd be in a better position. I'd recommend you do the same thing for biotech.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. It's been wonderful to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.